Hey, Alex and Joe, we're back for our weekly recap at Alpha Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This week was all about leg attacks. So before we go into that, I just got to point out, we're doing the no-gi thing tonight, not because we had a giant no-gi class, but because I managed to shrink the only clean gi top I had left. And unfortunately, I'm sitting next to Joe, who, let's face it, if they gave prizes for coolest rash guards, would take that home every single time. So here we are doing the no-gi thing today. So all week about the ankle attack. And ankle attacks is one of those things that really can generate a lot of controversy in jiu-jitsu, and it shouldn't. They are a perfectly valid submission, and the more influence we've seen from an Americanized aspect of the sport, influx from Sambo, they have become part of the sport, and we have to address that. However, there's a right and a wrong way to do everything. Some unnecessary heartburn gets laid at the feet of leg attacks because of injuries, and if you train them safely, they are perfectly safe to train. If you train them incorrectly, as with any technique, they can lead to injuries, and that's where they kind of get a bad rap. However, I do think there needs to be a certain progression with the leg attacks. If we jump right in, I think technically people should be learning ankle attacks all along, and knee bar attacks, and leg attacks throughout their jiu-jitsu journey. Because these angles can be finicky. You're dealing with big muscle groups a lot of times in the lower leg, and your leverage has to be spot on to manage those. That's not something you want to start learning at purple or brown belt. That's something you want to build too. And quite frankly, all those little nuanced movements that are going to allow you to attack the legs are going to give your upper body attacks and your chokes much, much greater chances of success. But to jump right in and crush every open guard attempt at a white belt and blue belt with a leg attack really stunts the growth of the open guard. So while technically I think people should be training them, and this is just my opinion, take it, throw it away for what it's worth, give that open guard a chance to develop at blue belt, at early purple belt. Get that open guard down first. That's a position. That is a way of safeguarding yourself with distance control in jiu-jitsu. So we have to be able to do that. So build that open guard first. Then at purple belt, start locking those ankle locks in, start locking those knee bars in. Then make a really well-developed open guard, deal with those. And that's a really good way to build that progression. So now, off my safety soapbox, we'll talk about the first thing we did this week, which was a straight ankle lock. Straight ankle lock has a lot of variants, a lot of different ways to do this. We're just going to work this from a combat base. I've broken Joe's guard. And one of the first things I like to do is build connection with the knees, because while he's got connection with his foot uncontested, he can use this to move his hip and counter, and it becomes very difficult. So I get connection with his knees, and now what I'm going to do is rock forward. And you'll notice what that does. It breaks the connection of his foot with my hip. This is slowing him down now. This is minimizing the movement in that hip. I'm weighting those knees with a relatively straight arm, so now my core is driving his hips, not my arms. I'm going to step up, and as I step up, I'm going to go ahead and let this arm overhook the leg. And I'm going to step. And as I step, notice I'm not letting my arm bend down. I'm bringing this arm at a 90-degree angle up with the radial aspect of the bone in the Achilles tendon. As I come up, I let that slide right to that notch where I want the attack to land. Now, I'm stepping under a hip with a little bit of a cross step. I'm coming down, controlling the knee, and I'm setting. I'm going to go to this position. As soon as I land here, my heel steps into his hip, and this is going to let me control his upper body motion forward by giving me something to shove down, and control his hip rotation side to side. With my thumb up, the whole time, I'm keeping the radius of my bone in that tender Achilles tendon. This is building a force multiplier under there. From here, I'm going to slide this hand over the top to straighten the shin, and my palm grabs my bicep. I can do this here, but when I roll my thumb towards me, you'll notice I'm taking the radius away and giving it the back of both bones, the radius and the ulna. It's a wider fulcrum. I want that fulcrum to stay nice and tight. From here, sliding this in, and I'm just going to collapse my elbows to my side. Now, we want to generate some pressure on this ankle. I'm locking this in, I'm looking up to straighten my back, and now I'm actually going to go ahead and straighten that extensor column by driving my chest out. So I'm looking up, and if everything's lined up tight, this is already creating so much pain in the Achilles tendon, most people are tapping. So, loosen this up a bit so I can go through the entire sequence. I'm looking up, and that straightens my back. I'm turning my chest, I'm pushing that chest out to eat up space, and now I'm going to think about driving my hips right to the back of his leg, right into that back of the knee space. So from here, straight back, looking up, and I drive. And that's going to create the pressure I'm looking for along the leg. Ideally, I'm pulling out to this little notch right underneath the Achilles tendon. However, even if I'm off on this a little, if I set my pressure generation system correctly and I set my extensor column correctly, I can set this almost up on the Achilles, up into the calf belly itself and still generate so much force, it will make your partner tap. So, straight ankle lock, very fundamental, often overlooked because people just grab it and squeeze or grab it and throw themselves back. Done properly, I should still have 6 to 8 inches of room between my back and the floor when I'm getting the submission. And that's a good gauge if your structure is correct on the lock or not. So if you're finding yourself all the way back, stop, check your structure. I guarantee you something's off. So, Alex and Joe facing off in the rash guards, much cooler. And bringing you our weekly recap. Check out the rest of our content, like and subscribe, share us around, and we'll see you next week.